What's up, A to Z Sports Live on a Tuesday, and it's a big show, a tri-stream show with myself, Sam Phelan, Zach Bingham, talking Titans draft on the week of the NFL draft, and it is finally time to have the ultimate draft debate when it comes to the Titans' first-round pick at 7th overall. Do you take the foundation of Joe Alt, the offensive lineman out of Notre Dame, or do you go after one of the best playmakers in this draft, and that would be wide receiver Malik Nabers out of LSU? We're going to dive through it all. This has been a month or so brewing between Sam and Zach. It was a show that I was not on. I don't know what I was doing, but I was off that particular day. And then I just got a text afterwards saying, let's do this draft week. And so here we are. It's draft week, and we're going to do it live like we always do and have a great conversation between these two guys about what is the right player to pick if both Joe Alt and Malik Nabers are on the board. It is throwing shade day, so we'll still throw shade, a little three-way shade here on the show. So, Sam, Zach, I'm buckled up, ready to go. So, Zach, I'll let you do the fine sharing routine here on this Tuesday before we get it rolling.
Yep, the sharing won't be up to me. It will be up to you guys in the chat as we broadcast live on 3 different platforms. Got a big show, as Austin said, today on this tri-stream. It's draft week. The buzz is in the air. The juice is running. The blood is flowing. We're going to get this thing rocking and rolling here very shortly. But as we broadcast live on these 3 platforms, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, we got you locked in. We will tweet out segment by segment, link by link, our YouTube link on our Twitter timeline at A to Z Sports. Make sure you follow at A to Z Sports. If you're a Titans fan, it's a great follow over there on X or Twitter. And if you follow us, you're going to be able to partake in the draft festivities. We'll be live from the draft on A to Z Sports as a company. We'll give you best Titans coverage. We've got live streaming shows. You got to make sure you're locked in there. So follow us on Twitter at A to Z Sports if you're a Titans fan. Easiest way to take in our live streams and our YouTube content on YouTube is to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel is very easy to find. Search A to Z Sports Nashville. You'll see the icon. Hit the subscribe button. So you can do 2 things. If you're already subscribed, hit the like button on this show. We're trying to grow this show. I know King VC will be in here very shortly with his duties and our duties to make sure that King VC is locked in and the chat is locked in. So you got to like the show. You got to subscribe, and you also got to ring the bell. Make sure your live alerts are on as we go live. Buck Rising's Primetime has a brand new showtime, which is at 7 p.m. instead of 8 p.m. Central Time. So that makes sure your alerts are live. Facebook, what's going on? Facebookers, bottom left corner of your screen, share, not a public. Sharing is caring, and caring is sharing, as we say on this show. Share the show around. We need to pop up your Facebook friends news feed. How that works is you guys share the show. That's the laundry is done. It's hung up. Let's do battle here. Ding, 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 ding. And let's get this party started.
Yep, let's been officially welcome to A to Z Sports, powered as always by the BetMGM app. I'm Austin Stanley. He is Sam Phelan, our Titans reporter at A2ZSports.com, and Zach Bingham here going live weekday mornings at 8 Central Time on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. Links to the show segment by segment on our Twitter X timeline. Also hit us up on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads for more great Titans content. We got to thank our sponsors because they make it happen for us, and they help out all of you, like Wilson County Hyundai, make them a part of your new car buying process. See them in Lebanon or online at wilsoncountyhyundai.com. The Bone and Joint Institute, boneandjointtn.org, the region's destination for comprehensive orthopedic and sports medicine care. Farm Bureau Health Plans, get a quote and get better coverage with our link at fbhp.com/ATOZ. And Krebs Kubota, an elite Kubota dealer with 3 great locations across the mid-state, Columbia, Franklin, and Murfreesboro. They're online at krebskubota.com. So, Sam, I'll bring you in here. How did this start? Like, why are we here? Like, give us a recap on the show, the conversation between you and Zach a month or so, at some point in the month of March, where, hey, we have to have this big-time debate the week of the draft, and he got us to this point.
Yeah, I don't even remember what Zach and I were talking about at the time there, but I just kind of casually in one of our morning show conversations as we discussed draft possibilities for the Titans, the overall idea of drafting a wide receiver in the first round came up, it was very clear early on that this was something that I was not only receptive to, but actually an advocate for, and something that Zach was totally against. And so it sort of was something that I wanted to talk about right then in the moment. We had a lot of thoughts kind of boiling and brewing back then. And Zach said, nope, hold up. We'll do this as a show before the draft at some point. So we've been kind of putting this one off. And ultimately, I think the title of our show this morning, very accurate, because this is the ultimate debate for Titans fans right now as we close in on Thursday's first round and this draft gets underway, is how desperately do you need an offensive line? How flexible are you to go with a different position? And which of these two guys specifically, both viewed at the top of their position groups, makes a bigger impact for the Titans now and in the future? It's a really fun conversation. I think there's a lot of nuance to it. So I think it's going to make for an electric show and a lot of good points.
Yeah, and I see Lucas on YouTube saying everything on this show is organic. That's why we love it. Yeah, that's how we set it up. We know we have different opinions, and we try to do our best to have real organic differences of opinion and not to fabricate something. And so whenever you have this, which Zach truly believes it's Joe Alt, he's been saying that for months,
years,
a
year out of the womb. Just like AJ
Zach,
Brown, just like calling AJ Brown, the Titans should have drafted AJ Brown. I said that in October.
I feel very
strong. Baby Joe Alt came out of the womb at 6'9", 500 pounds.
Yeah.
He was born and bred to be a tackle and a left tackle in the NFL. And the Titans have an opportunity to take a good player, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, he was born and bred to be a left tackle in the NFL so much that he played quarterback as a freshman in high school. So I think there's a lot of years of Joe Alt that Zach has been following here. But anyway, yes, everything is organic on the show to set up the best conversation. So let's set the table for this, because we know the Titans have had the worst offensive line in the NFL over the last 2 seasons. They've also been desperate for playmakers. DeAndre Hopkins saving the day last season for Ryan Tannehill and Will Levis after joining the team, and Traylon Burks has been a disappointment. So the top 5 draft needs by position in this order that Sam put together last week of offensive tackle, wide receiver, inside linebacker, edge rusher, and safety. These are the biggest needs, but it doesn't necessarily mean the Titans will draft these positions in this particular order. Because we talked about that last week too, Sam, right?
I didn't necessarily place these in any particular order as well. I do believe that these are the top 5 and you know, Austin, you mentioned it. You and I talked about this last week. I view inside linebacker as a bigger need if you were just looking at this roster and where the holes are than, say, edge rusher. But we also know like how value works in the NFL draft. And typically you're not going to be somebody drafting an inside linebacker over an edge rusher. Edge rushers have more of a tendency to go 2nd round, 3rd round, whatever, 1st round even. And inside linebackers are more of a day 3 sort of thing. So those are the 5 positions. When you take them, you know, we'll see.
Right. And then we also know that Joel has been a popular pick so much that Mel Kiper Jr. at ESPN, the godfather of the NFL draft industry, has made Joe Alt his mock prediction for the Titans at 7 in all 4 of his mock draft projections on ESPN.com so far this offseason. We know the need is there. Andre Dillard was horrible last year and somehow got a contract with the Green Bay Packers last week. And then we have wide receiver Malik Nabers out of LSU, who has had the most high-level attention of any draft prospect so far this offseason for the Titans. He had a 30 visit where he came to Nashville and toured the facility, as did Joe Alt. He had a private pro day meeting with Titans brass at his pro day at LSU, in a formal interview at the Combine. Joe Alt had the formal interview at the Combine, had a 30 visit in Nashville, but interesting to note that the Titans did not send head coach Brian Callahan, GM Rand Carthon, or vice president or president of football operations Chad Brinker to Joe Alt's pro day. They sent some scouts and I believe assistant GM Anthony Robinson to Notre Dame pro day because Joe Alt changed what he was going to do more last minute at the pro day, but they did not meet with Joe Alt at a high level at the pro day. So that's kind of setting the table here. So let's go ahead and jump into it because this is what we're all here for. And it is the ultimate debate about this Titans first round draft pick. It's if you have both Joe Alt and Malik Nabers available at 7, who do you draft? It's a pretty simple question, but that is where we're at. If you have both Joe Alt and Malik Nabers available on the board at 7, who should the Titans pick? And I'll start, Zach, start with you telling everybody about our great friends at Farm Bureau Health Plans.
Yeah, FBHP.com is where to go to get your health plan. I got my health plan a couple of years ago. I'm glad that I did. Health, dental, and vision. You get a health plan. You get also dental, where you can get free teeth cleanings. You get contact lens allowance, which I got because I've been wearing contact lenses for, hell, feels like the majority of my life since 7th grade. But that's the lifestyle I live. The best part is Farm Bureau Health Plans helps that lifestyle. 200 plus locations across the state of Tennessee. They've got you covered at every turn. East Tennessee, Middle Tennessee, West Tennessee. Find your agent. They've been in business over 75 years, and they've been trusted by the Tennessee Titans, A to Z Sports, obviously, the Tennessee Volunteers. They've got great partnerships all across the state. Let them partner with you and your family. You've just got to find your right plan. That's FBHP.com/ATOZ.
All right, Sam, I will send you to the chat to get to the answers from the audience today on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. By the way, we do have King VC's super chat of lock in and like the show. As King VC said, we're trying to get 215 likes per platform this week. Last week it was 100, Sam. The ante has been upped at 215 per platform. So King VC, lock in, like the show. But Sam, the question that you'll go to the chat on, if the Titans have both Joe Alt and Malik Nabers available at 7, who do you draft? What is the chat saying right now?
John Vargas starts it off saying Nabers. Tony's with Nabers. Major Keys is with Nabers. Carlos says Joe Alt. That's where Billy Jones is as well with Joe Alt. Jake Locker's burner wants to trade back, which I think would be crazy in that scenario. JQ's wants Malik Nabers. So does Kaz. So does Rock and David. We got Joe Alt from Joe and from Landon and from Paul and from Michael. Katie says Nabers. Michael says Nabers. Alt from Ashley with a couple exclamation points there. Feeling good about that. Amar says Nabers is the better option. Nabers easy. Nabers because Alt isn't it. Rooney says it's Alt. Roy says it's an Alt only type of pick. DeMarco says Nabers. Daniel says Nabers. Tyler says Nabers. And then we've got Alt coming in from Yuri, Brad, and Ken, and IR Hoshi. This is why it is such a good conversation, because the chat, relatively 50-50, maybe a little bit more majority towards Malik Nabers in the chat earlier this morning, but a lot of very passionate, very different opinions. Joe Alt is either the guy or he's not it whatsoever, and it has to be Malik Nabers. That's why I think it's fun.
Yes, and I'm going to go ahead and put up a poll on YouTube because I want to get some more percentage data on this. But Zach, we will let you begin with your side of this question. If both available on the board at 7, is it the left tackle out of Notre Dame, Joe Alt, or is it playmaking wide receiver out of LSU, Malik Nabers?
Well, look, sex sells. We all know the chat diving into sex selling. And Malik Nabers is one sexy MFer. We know that. He can catch the ball. He can take it all the way to the end zone. Did that many a times at LSU. But this is about protection, boys and girls. It's in the trenches. I'm going to ask both of you, Sam and Austin, when do you feel like the Titans started to kind of trend down? The demise of the playoff runs year after year. When do you think that kind of started?
To jump in first, I think it was when Taylor Lewan tore his ACL the second time. And then when Roger Saffold started to deteriorate and have injuries that stacked up that had him be cut there and then ended up being up in Buffalo. But I would say that was probably the beginning. The offensive line breaking down was the beginning of it all, in my opinion.
What do you think, Sam?
When they traded A.J. Brown and gave away their best offensive playmaker for a lottery ticket.
You don't think that they were bad before that? like starting to trend.
I mean, they were the 1 seed in the AFC.
And after that happened, things started to change. What happened when they don't have a quarterback to throw to anybody, right?
Sure.
Lewan and Saffold, all of those things did happen. But look at the statistics of what their offensive line represented over the last 3 years. Sacks allowed. Let's churn it back. If you go back to the demise, and we all agree that it started to trend down, 2021, they ranked 26th in sacks allowed. 2022, 27th in sacks allowed. 2023, last year, it's not getting any better. They were 28th in sacks allowed. They might as well, that barn door might as well have been wide open. Wide receiver is nice, and I think that they need wide receivers. But Sam, what did they just do in free agency? They just signed a massive wide receiver, the wide receiver in free agency. But what's a wide receiver if you don't have anybody to throw to him? The most reliant position is wide receiver. You have to have a good quarterback. We've seen many a times great wide receivers get pissed off and frustrated on the sidelines because they've had a bad QB that can't get them the football. This team, the Tennessee Titans, the reason of their demise has been because they've gotten their quarterback injured. And it hadn't just been Ryan Tannehill. It was also Will Levis, their young budding rookie star. It wasn't because DeAndre Hopkins was on the field or they had playmakers. It was because he was getting rolled up on and sacks were allowed. You've got to take a step back, and I would say everybody that voted Nabers in the chat. I don't hate Nabers by any means. I just think that it's time to address the issue at hand, and that was Ryan Tannehill, your starting quarterback, not being on the field directly affected your opportunity to win football games. Cold, hard facts right there. And Ryan Tannehill went down, and I think this is kind of when it started to sputter. He played through injury in 2022, was in a walking boot pretty much all year in October. Hurt taking a sack in December in 2022. Hurt again in October in 2023. Sprained ankle, had ankle issues, had surgery on the ankle. What happened last year with Will Levis? Will Levis went down in overtime, week 15, grade 2 to 3, high ankle sprain. December 17th, 2023. Came back December 31st, New Year's Eve. The Houston Texans can't protect him. Rolled up on. Austin and Sam. I don't know where Austin is, but Sam.
I'm ready. I'm here. Ask me.
You may want to draft Malik Nabers, but Malik Nabers is useless if your quarterback isn't on the field. And if you want to sit here and prop up Mason Rudolph and you want him to ride you into the sunset over the next couple of years, but this is about protection of your most sacred asset. The most important position in team sport is quarterback. Without the quarterback, wide receivers are useless. And the number one thing that helps the quarterback is protecting the quarterback. And this team has shown you that this franchise cannot protect the quarterback over the last 3 years because they've had one major problem: offensive line.
I would like to ask you real quick before I kind of get into my rebuttal to that. You referenced the sack numbers from 2023 all the way back to 2021. That 2021 team, 26th in the NFL in sacks, like you mentioned, number 1 seed in the AFC. That's without Derrick Henry for half the season. So what's different between that 2021 team to the 2022-2023 team? It's still Ryan Tannehill. It's
they
still
progressively got worse at offensive line. That's my answer.
Not substantially. I mean, 26th to 28th is not a
last year
difference.
They were dead. Like last year, Pro Football Focus, whether you like them, hate them, whatever, they graded the Titans to be the worst offensive line in the league
Sure.
because they finished last in pass blocking efficiency. Dead ass last. So the question that you said is, what's the difference between 2021? They progressively got worse at protecting their most valuable
But you were using sacks allowed, right? And you were saying sacks allowed, that 2021 team, 26th. Last year's team, 28th. There's not a huge jump there, right? And yet the offenses look substantially
got
different
worse.
without by
It didn't
two
get better.
spots, Zach.
It didn't stay the same either.
Sure. Okay. All right. But I mean, those are pretty comparable figures right there. The point is, what is the biggest difference between 2021 to 2023? And I think it's, yes, the offensive line was a problem, but the playmakers that were in the offense that had a poor offensive line were different, especially through the air, where Ryan Tannehill had more options to go to. He was healthier at the time. He had guys who could get open, and therefore had more to work with, where he was able to get the ball out and not, take as many hits. I mean, injuries are part of football. And so I do want to start my rebuttal here by agreeing with Zach in the overall point that protecting the quarterback and having your quarterback healthy is of the utmost priority. That needs to happen regardless. None of it does matter if your quarterback is hurt, right? The Kansas City Chiefs can do whatever they want. If Patrick Mahomes goes down, they're not the Kansas City Chiefs anymore. And so protecting Patrick Mahomes needs to be a thing for them the same way it should be for every team building around a young quarterback. Where I think I don't see eye to eye with Zach is what they are required to do in order to do that. I believe there will be opportunities for the Titans to add good offensive linemen, good offensive tackles with pick 38 in rounds 2 and 3. I believe in the depth of this draft class a little bit more. And I believe Malik Nabers is in a category that makes him worth drafting and worth gambling on the tackle depth. It's more about, not that I'm anti Joe Alt. Joe Alt was on my wish list that I released on A2ZSports.com as players that I would be happy with the Titans bringing in and drafting. Malik Nabers is in another stratosphere for me. And so really there's 3 reasons why I believe Malik Nabers could and should be the Titans draft pick if they get an opportunity to do it. Number 1 is the player himself, the physical ability, the explosive speed. It doesn't take a lot to watch the tape and see that Malik Nabers moves at a different rate than everybody else at the college level and is probably going to do the same thing at the NFL level. He can beat you deep downfield. He can get you in yak. He was the number 1 player you wanted to bring up PFF, highest deep receiving grade of any college football wide receiver, according to PFF, Malik Nabers. Most deep catches in 2023, Rome Odunze, then Malik Nabers. Led all receivers, according to PFF stats, in yards per route run and grade against man coverage, according to PFF. Not Marvin Harrison Jr., not Rome Odunze. Malik Nabers is the guy that won every single time in these metrics. The Titans are a team that had 1 wide receiver who was not on their team last year. Calvin Ridley is the only wide receiver on their current roster that was above average in separation created last season. They do not have a ton of guys that have the ability to get open that Malik Nabers has. So you have what I believe, special talent at wide receiver. You have a roster that needs a slot, like we've heard from Brian Callahan, needs a slot wide receiver that's explosive, a wide receiver that can create separation for Will Levis, allow him to get the ball out quicker, a young wide receiver that would now be able to grow with your young quarterback and fits into your roster not only now, but in the future. Reminder to everybody, DeAndre Hopkins has 1 year remaining on his contract. There is no guarantee that DeAndre Hopkins is with the Tennessee Titans beyond 2024. And as good as he is now, he is getting older. So we don't know what that situation is going to look like. And if you're hoping, which most young head coaches, most young general managers are, hoping to build an offense that is consistent, that can grow and develop together and have stability within your offensive core, you need to take a chance at swinging for that superstar wide receiver. they're getting paid hundreds of millions of dollars, where even a guy like Calvin Ridley is getting 92 in today's league. You are not going to spend $100 million on another wide receiver and have over $200 million invested in two players that are wide receivers, because you're going to have to pay Will Levis pretty soon. You're going to have to build around some of these veterans that are leaving. So if you want that other piece of the offensive pie, you have to get him in the draft, and you're better off doing it now when you have a chance at a potentially generational wide receiver, like a potentially superstar talent. When people look at this draft class, they say there's 3 that are really, really damn good. That's not what they said last year. And then thirdly, I think if you look at recent history in the National Football League, I'm not talking Corey Davis, top 5 pick. I'm not talking John Ross.
Yeah, that's no longer recent, right? 2017 is no longer recent.
Let's look at
still impactful to Titans fans.
Yeah, but still no longer recent.
Let's look since 2020. There are 5 wide receivers that have been drafted in the top 10. Drake London, Garrett Wilson, Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith. Star.
But those were over a period of years. The reason why the Corey Davis year is valuable is because the comparison is that there are 3 wide receivers that were picked to be in that particular draft, to be those ones picked. They were in the top 10. This is the same scenario of 3 really good wide receivers that are going to be picked, presumably somewhat in the top 10.
Here's the difference. Here's why. Let me jump in for a second. Here's why the 2024 class and the 2017 class are different. Because in the 2024 class, we know quarterbacks are going to go 1, 2, 3, maybe 1, 2, 3, Marvin Harrison Jr., quarterback 4, 5, right? And so the difference is, if you look at consensus big boards of just player rankings, a lot of times you will see Malik Nabers and Rome Odunze and Joe Alt in the top 5 of overall players. Marvin Harrison Jr. might be 1 or 2. Caleb Williams will be the other 2 or 1. And then you've got those 3 players. So in the 2017 class, you didn't have the knockout quarterbacks in the process. You had 2 good quarterbacks that came later, but it was edge rusher. It was a 1-year wonder, Mitch Trubisky. It was a guy that played D-line at Stanford who was versatile. And then you had, Jamal Adams and Corey Davis and Leonard Fournette. Hell, Leonard Fournette went 4th overall in that class, and there hasn't been a running back to get like that. I mean, Saquon Barkley did it maybe 4 or 5 years ago. But the point is, that was a very different NFL where you had a run on wide receivers because you had 3 teams in the top 10 that needed a receiver picking 5, 7, and 9. And it was just
you have wide receiver needy teams in this draft too. I mean,
sure,
the position is valued more today than it ever has been. I don't think I'm disagreeing with that. I know that the wide receiver, you talk about Leonard Fournette, the position at running back, that's not even a thought that a running back would be drafted as high consistently over a number of years from this point until the next 5 at running back. Wide receiver is the thing. Look at Tyreek Hill's contract. Look at everybody's contract. I get it. I understand. The point, though, overall for the Tennessee Titans is they just got the superstar wide receiver. They just purchased it. Right? The guy, the number 1 free agent wide receiver available. They ran Carthon, did some magic, went down to Florida and got his guy, pulled him back up to Tennessee. And that is paired with DeAndre Hopkins. The Titans are in a good position this year. I understand future, but you get draft picks in the future. Every year you get more draft picks. And you know what, Sam? The trend, and Austin, the trend is that salary cap numbers, as money is made, are continuing to go up. So, Sam, you're saying that you can't pay 2 top wide receivers. I think in the future, that's actually going to be more of a thing than ever.
Not with paid quarterback on a big deal.
Will Levis, the Bengals are about to be the
we don't know what the deal is going to be.
Well, the Bengals are about to be it, right? Because Joe Burrow got his deal last year. They franchise tagged T. Higgins for $21 million, and Jamar Chase is in that extension negotiation window. We know that.
Here's the difference, though. Joe Burrow is the number 1 overall pick that got paid the highest amount of money in the history of the NFL, right? Will Levis is not a number 1 pick. He doesn't start there. He may get there. Well, you hope that he gets there. But compare Joe Burrow's contract that he just got to a possible Will Levis's future contract.
But the salary cap's going to go up, Zach, and the price of a franchise quarterback continues to get pushed up. So whether Will Levis breaks the number of Joe Burrow or not, like he's going to be, if you view him as your franchise quarterback, he's in that ballpark, right?
If all goes well,
the unknown. Fair.
If all goes, if the Titans had it their way, Will Levis's second contract will be bigger than Joe Burrow's.
Yeah, because the problem is, Austin, right? The Titans, they haven't had it go their way in 20 years.
Thanks, dude. But
you're saying my point is the odds are
inflation of the cap.
What are the odds, though? Like, you also have to play the odds of making sure that you're betting on your quarterback. That's valuable, but you're also stabilizing your team so you can adjust if, in fact, the second round pick that doesn't have a 5th-year option doesn't work out, and you've got to go draft another guy. And we see that time and time again.
Without a doubt. And we're seeing, look, go back 3 drafts ago, 2021 quarterback draft. You got a bunch of first-round quarterbacks. Only one guy's with that team that drafted him, and that's Trevor Lawrence. And now Mac Jones has joined him too.
So this team, the stability of the biggest problem that you've had over the last 3 years, which is protecting your quarterback, it is literally the number 1 problem. Every single year, all 3 of us have done shows day in and day out of exhausting how bad their offensive line is. Yep. Their quarterbacks keep getting hurt. They keep getting sacked. We keep watching bad football. You talk about separation, Sam. You can't get separation when you're trying to separate Will Levis's back from the turf. And that's what has happened year after year was 8 or 17.
I believe. Sorry, do we have an ad read to get to here?
No, I was finish your point. I've got a rebuttal on either side.
Right? I think one of the things that you brought up, right? Wide receiver is the thing now. The value that we've seen placed on wide receiver, even within the last 5 years, has increased significantly in the NFL nowadays. And I think as a result, I think teams have gotten, and this is an important point that I want everybody who's looking at this draft class to understand. I think we've gotten better, and I think front offices have gotten better at understanding and grading the top tier wide receiver talent appropriately. Last year, I think everybody was surprised when no wide receivers go in the top 20 picks and they all fall to the back end of the first round. And the reality was nobody was super overwhelmed by the talent. But if you look at the guys, I mean, even the guys in the last 5 years or whatever since 2020 that have gone just outside of the first round, and it's more talents like Chris Olave. There is a reason that, like Zach, you brought up the Corey Davis class as an example that had 3 wide receivers, right? And everybody loved all of them, and not all of them worked out great. But can we point to the draft class that has Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle in it, both in the top 10, or a draft class that has Drake London and Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave all around the top 10? All of these guys are turning into productive 1,000-yard difference-making wide receivers. You don't see, and as a team like the Titans, if things go how they want to, you don't get an opportunity to get one of those guys very frequently, very often at all. And so I believe that the hit rate, and I went back just for, to entertain myself, just looked at the offensive tackles that have gone in the last 5 years as well. And most people would be surprised to know they don't work out all that frequently. There's been about 1 star offensive tackle go in the top 10 in the last 5 or 6 years. His name is Penei Sewell. He's an absolute monster. He's a multiple-time All-Pro and a multiple-time Pro Bowler. And yet I look at the
And he's a right tackle.
And he's a right tackle. And I look at the list of the guys that have gone in the top 10 of the draft. Darnell Wright, Paris Johnson last year. Of 56 offensive tackles that played at least 50% of offensive snaps last year, PFF blocking grade. Paris Johnson, 46 of 56. Darnell Wright, 43 out of 56, both below league average. Charles Cross was still below league average in 2023 after being one of the worst tackles in blocking grade as a rookie. Evan Neal already out of his way out of New York. They hate him there both on and off the field. He was absolutely horrific. Penei Sewell is a stud. Mekhi Becton allowed the most sacks in football last year. Still a free agent. Nobody wants him. Nobody's signing Mekhi Becton. He was a top 10 pick at tackle as well. Jedrick Wills had an injury problem. Other than that, he's been good. Andrew Thomas had one good year and fell off the cliff last season. Before Penei Sewell, the last offensive tackle drafted in the top 10 that was selected to a Pro Bowl was Ronnie Stanley, drafted in 2016. The last All-Pro, Jack Conklin. This is not like if you draft the left tackle, you're getting some home run, especially recently. And if you look at the recent history that the league is telling you about how we draft or how we grade and draft wide receivers, the guys that are graded this highly that go in the top 10, especially top 5 conversation, end up changing offenses and changing teams. So that is also a big reason for this for me. Is I'm not convinced Joe Alt is necessarily the best tackle in this class. I'm not sure that Joe Alt is coming in and giving you so much more than you can get either later in the first round in a trade back or at 38 if there's somebody that Bill Callahan really
but everyone else is. Like,
okay,
Sam, you have your own opinion, but if you look at the rankings, every single personality, NFL analyst, Joe Alt is the best tackle in this draft. You may disagree. That's fine. You and Mike Marks might get along very, very well. But he is the number one. The other one is Marvin Harrison Jr. is the best wide receiver in this draft.
Let's check Bruce Feldman's piece this morning that said otherwise. Look, there's a lot of smoke around that. Hold on.
Check the guy you're referencing.
Zach,
so if you want to bring up Bruce Feldman, I can bring up Dog the Bounty Hunter.
Okay, well, Zach used a timeout earlier. I don't know if we should have set each player gets one timeout in this show. Zach used his timeout earlier. I'm going to use my timeout now and be able to say, all right, I've got a rebuttal on either side of the argument here between Malik Nabers and Joe Alt of who the Titans should take if they're both available at 7. I'll also update the YouTube poll there. Hit that like button on the show on Facebook and on YouTube. Got more work to do there for King VC. But Sam, first tell everybody about our great friends at the Bone and Joint Institute.
Well, if Zach's right, we might have to send this contact information over to the Titans quarterback room. Our friends over at the Bone and Joint Institute, they are the region's destination for comprehensive orthopedic and sports medicine care. Whenever you get hurt in life, you have to know who to trust. You don't want to fumble on your recovery. They've got great doctors, great care, and a state-of-the-art rehab facility to assist you. Located out in Franklin, right off the highway, easy access in and out. And you don't have to drive all over Middle Tennessee to get to your different appointments when you go to the Bone and Joint Institute. They got everything all under one roof. Clinic, rehab, imaging, surgery, testing. It's all there. Schedule an appointment with them at boneandjointtn.org.
And with BetMGM, it is playoff hockey time in the NHL, and BetMGM is dropping bet and get tokens in the account of customers in Tennessee. Simply add a wager on the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs to your bet slip and activate that token. Game 2 for the Preds tonight in Vancouver. So check that out. You'll instantly get a bonus bet no matter how your wager goes, from big hits to overtime goals. BetMGM is here for every moment of the Stanley Cup playoffs. BetMGM is an official partner of the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs, and so you can get that bet and get token right there for in your account for customers in Tennessee. BetMGM and GameSense remind you to play responsibly. See BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. Tennessee only existing customer offer. Subject to qualification, eligible requirements. Rewards issued and eligible bonus bets that expire 7 days. And for problem game of sport, call Tennessee Redline at 800-889-9789. So make sure you hit that like button on the show. King VC wants us to get to 215 likes per platform each day. Rashid says Team Sam, and there's King VC says lock in the show. So Sam, I'm going to go through a couple of your points that you made for Malik Nabers. Sure. And the first was saying that he gets the most separation of anybody in this class. Is that correct? Succinctly, is that one of your points?
I mean, he's the best in man coverage. Man coverage against him, he's the best receiver in this class. And so
you
yes,
create separation, in man coverage.
Obviously, right? People love Marvin Harrison Jr. Special wide receiver, going to be awesome. But a guy who kind of thrives more in the contested catch game than he does in the just pure separation game. So.
Right. So Malik Nabers, elite when it comes to creating separation, and that's a big deal in the NFL. What I think that I hear when you say that is I hear Brian Callahan talking about, well, sometimes you have to throw quick and throw early, and you have to win early on the outside to be able to throw early. And if you can do that, then you avoid any type of pressure from the inside, the outside at tackle, or whatever for your quarterback. And so I think Malik Nabers has the ability to win early in the count and get open early to allow for Will Levis to get the ball out of his hands. So I think that is where Malik Nabers can separate himself, especially when DeAndre Hopkins, because of his ability of just being an expert at the wide receiver position at his age of being 32 years old, knows how to get open early, but he's going to be 32 this season. We know Calvin Ridley is going to turn 30 in December of this season. Having somebody early in their career to grow with Levis who can win early to help Levis throw early is a big benefit. Now, Sam, you also said about wide receiver contracts in free agency are going up. I think the reason why wide receiver contracts are getting so much of the headlines in free agency is because more wide receivers at a high level are available in free agency. You know what's not available in free agency? A left tackle worth spending a bunch of money on. And so if you draft your left tackle, you can keep them and retain them by extending their contract instead of having to go out and finding the best left tackle available with a team that decided to not bring them back, because there are more available free agent wide receivers who can score touchdowns in the NFL than there are really good, above average, great left tackles available for free agency. And so I think there's 1 point on either side. Zach, I'll toss it to you to see what your thoughts are on both those points.
Well, look, I didn't pay you to say that, but I did have some research based on what you said, because if you look at the 2025 free agent wide receiver class, players that can catch touchdowns, right? That's what you're trying to go after. The Titans have a boatload still of money to spend because their big quarterback and running back contract got off the board. Hard to find these type of offensive linemen in the free agency class, and I think this will continue to be a trend. Keenan Allen will be a free agent next year. Justin Jefferson. Now, all these guys won't be available, right? Because they will get re-signed by some of their teams. But Justin Jefferson will be a free agent. Mike Williams will be a free agent. Jamar Chase got a club option, so I won't even count him. Brandon Ayuk, who that's going to be a name, obviously, to watch in this draft, will be a free agent. CeeDee Lamb will be a free agent. Chris Godwin will be a free agent. The Bucs just signed Mike Evans. They're going to have to make a decision there. Older Amari Cooper will be a free agent. Brandon Cooks, who's been on 10,000 teams, will be a free agent. Deontay Johnson will be a free agent. DeAndre Hopkins will be a free agent. So Jerry Jeudy will be a free agent by that time, and Zay Jones. That's a laundry list of wide receivers available in free agency that goes to, again, I didn't pay Austin a single damn dime to bring this up, but you're not going to find that laundry list of left tackles, not right tackles, not left guards, not centers, not right guards, not tight ends, left tackles. It is the anchor of your line that you'd be building a pretty damn good line. Sam, I want to go to war with the brand new center Cushenberry, Skaronski, the first round pick from a year ago, and Joe Mother effing Alt on the left side at 6'9" to protect my quarterback, whether it's Will Levis today or Will Levis in 5 years or somebody else in 5 years. I think you have that core of protection that has hindered the Titans from being successful, at least at very minimum, over the last 2 seasons of missing the playoffs?
All right. So on that, I do think that, and Ann brought up this comment that I favorited here, says, but that's not Sam's point. His point is the quality of offensive line is deeper in this draft, and you can get a good quality offensive lineman at 38, but the type of receiver that would be available at 38, there's a much bigger drop-off from the Nabers, Odunze, Marvin Harrison Jr. crowd.
My quick response is that is this year's draft. And as the trajectory of drafts at wide receiver and the value of what the college football game is producing, next year you can get value at wide receiver
because
multiple rounds.
Because Zach, remember, what did Sam say about last year's receiver class? Who was the first receiver taken? And what was it? Jackson Smith and Jigba at like 20-something to the Seahawks. He was okay. Puka Nacua was great, 5th-round pick that nobody really expected. But not every class is created the same. Just like Joe Alt might be the best tackle prospect in the top 10 since Penei Sewell, we think, and each draft is different. This wide receiver class is really, really heavy in the top 50 picks. After that, it gets thin. Last year's class was better in the mid rounds. Maybe didn't have a lot of high traits guys. It wasn't a lot of that testing like freaks, and it was more of like guys that could get open like Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua type players coming from smaller schools.
Yeah. So I think obviously, right, I saw a comment here that was like, Sam just said teams are not good at identifying tackles yet. I want one in the second round. I mean, Jonathan, the fact of the matter is that anytime a team is able to scout and identify talent in later rounds of the draft, whether that's round 2 or whether you're getting a starting left tackle in round 5, right? That is the hack of being a good NFL team. The same way Austin just pointed out, like the Los Angeles Rams being able to find a wide receiver with the impact of Puka Nacua that fits in their offense so perfectly in the 5th or 6th round or whenever it was then that they took him is awesome. That's always what you are rooting for, is that ability to identify. But on top of what you just said, Austin, regarding next year's draft, you don't know where you're picking. And I think if the Titans had it their way, they are picking towards the back end of the 1st round in the 18 to 22 range, right? Where you're a more competitive team next year. And if things go that way, you're no longer in a position to replace DeAndre Hopkins via the draft. And I want to go back to those free agents, right? Because there's that whole list of free agents. The reality of the matter is that most of those guys, at least the ones that are attractive, the Justin Jeffersons, Jamar Chase, CeeDee Lambs, those guys are not going to be free agents. They'll get tagged if they're not extended, and they'll most likely get extended or traded. Either way, when was the last time there was a young, like sub 27 stud wide receiver that was one of the top 10 in the league that just hit the open market and signed with a team? That doesn't happen, right? You're usually settling.
But they do get traded, though. And we saw that a couple of years ago.
But now you're giving up a pick that you could just use to get the guy now on a rookie deal.
But you know what you're trading for. Yeah. Like, you know the actual value. You think, and we all think, we don't have a crystal ball. We think that Malik Nabers and Marvin Harrison Jr. and Rome Odunze are going to be unbelievable talents. Just like we all thought Laquan Treadwell was going to be pretty damn good. He sucked. Right? So you just don't know, right? And when you trade for a player, like, he may not be good on your team, but that's the value. Like T. Higgins, when you trade for T. Higgins, you know what you're getting in return.
But that's a move. Nobody trades for T. Higgins unless you're ready to go.
But
right?
No, but look at
the
this.
Eagles trading for AJ Brown.
The Titans could be that team, because what happened when the Eagles traded for AJ Brown? They had proof of concept that Jalen Hurts could do it, and they made that trade because they were ready to go. Same thing with the Dolphins and Tua. They got Tyreek Hill ready to go. The Raiders thought they were when they went and got Devontae Adams with his college roommate Derek Carr, but it didn't work out. We obviously know that it's a problem. Look, here's another thing. The only reason why the Titans were able to add such a high-level center in free agency in Lloyd Cushenberry is because the Denver Broncos franchise is an absolute failure right now with everything when it comes to selecting and creating the new jerseys to the roster development and building. It's so bad in Denver, and Cushenberry was available. But you don't get that high-level offensive line available in free agency that much. There's usually a glaring red flag when that player is available, like the Cowboys not bringing back Tyrone Smith, who's played really well, but every other year he's missed like 10 games. And so now the Jets had to take a flyer on that. And so I think, look, I'm going to update this poll on YouTube. And right now we're asking the question, if the Titans had both Joe Alt and Malik Nabers available at 7, who do you draft? And I'm going to answer the question because you guys have thrown this out there for 45 minutes or so and had a really good back and forth. You have Sam.
Yeah, I feel like I didn't get to fully finish my point. Okay. Like most of the time in free agency, when you are looking at those guys, you end up settling for the Keenan Allens that you mentioned, right? Like a Keenan Allen who was traded for a 4th round pick, and that was like, the best that they could do for a guy who
DeAndre Hopkins.
Right. But like the point is not to have
pretty damn good.
But the point is not to replace a 30-something-year-old wide receiver with another 30-something-year-old wide receiver, to have a revolving door when there are injury histories with guys like Keenan Allen, when there's age concerns that are concerns with Keenan Allen, right?
Like DeAndre Hopkins?
Yeah, and that's exactly why they need Malik Nabers. I mean, the point is to add a 20-year-old star, the Jamar Chase, the Brandon Ayuk, the Justin Jefferson that you just coveted in free agency, but instead of being like, damn, wish they didn't franchise tag him. Damn, wish they didn't extend him. He's your guy that is your guy with your quarterback for 10 years that you don't let out of your building. He becomes the foundation of your offense. You're not in this spot very often to go and get that guy and fit him in so perfectly with a couple of veterans to make life easy for a young quarterback, to get wide open, to do all of those things early on, get the ball out of his hands quickly. Like the point is to elevate this offense from being, well, we've got a couple guys that could maybe go for 1,000 yards, to having a guy that might be able to go for 1,000 yards and one of the best 5 to 10 damn wide receivers in the league. I think that's what Malik Nabers is. And maybe that's just the difference of like your evaluation of him and my evaluation of him. But I think this is going to be the guy that every other NFL franchise looks at in 2028 and goes, man, maybe we could sign Malik Nabers, man. And then the Titans are going to go, nope, franchise tag, nope, extension. And he'll be in
a best case scenario, right? Like you just said out, like Malik Nabers' dream is up. This is what happens. And I ride into the sunset. As we talked about, the Titans have been praying that at multiple positions for years and years and years. And the odds are that doesn't happen. I don't know whether it will happen with Malik Nabers. The difference, Sam, I think is simple, is evaluating the value of the risk. So, Sam, you are willing to risk taking a later round pick, later being 2nd or 4th or whatever, at the offensive tackle position, which is, in my opinion, the number one priority that needs to be fixed on the football team.
Yeah.
I guess I would ask, do you agree that the number one priority, whether they take Malik Nabers or not, is as left tackle?
Yeah, I do agree with that.
Okay, so we're in agreement. That's good. The value of risk, though, Sam, the opportunity, I would rather swing my swing on the singular, absolutely everybody besides Bruce effing Feldman saying that Joe Alt is the best left tackle in this draft. If you swung and got the best left tackle at the most important position that you and I just agreed on, that you need, that has wrecked your franchise for 3 years and has deteriorated you to even pick 7th, the number one priority, and you get to swing your swing at the best singular player in this draft at that position, I'd rather do that than possibly risk another Dylan Radins, because it's the number one priority for your franchise, but you're willing to risk and hope you get a better value at 2nd or 4th.
Right.
And I am not, and that's the difference between you and I am not willing to risk that at the most important position that needs to be addressed.
Okay.
I think that's a really good point. I think the word risk, sorry, Austin, this is a really important way of summarizing, I think, the argument that we're kind of having here. It is all about risk, like you said. Now, I mean, you would have to agree with this as well. There is risk attached to a guy like Joe Alt as well, where just because he's graded as the top offensive tackle does not mean he's a good offensive tackle in the NFL. And I just cited a bunch of guys who were the same example, right? I will give you absolutely. There's less risk in putting Joe Alt at left tackle than there is at drafting somebody at 38. The question becomes, how much are the Titans willing to risk? I think that risk can be minimized. And I think the job of minimizing that risk is on your offensive-minded head coach.
Not the health of my quarterback. That's why I led with that. Not the health of my quarterback. 2 years have shown if your quarterback's not healthy and his ankles are in shambles and they're broken or sprained or in a walking boot, then the reason why that happened was because of the offensive line, Andre Dillard and company.
And
all right, my turn on this.
To an extent. This is not Mike Vrabel's offense. This is a new offense.
All right, I'm going to take over
here. Protection is protection,
guys.
Zach,
all right, Craig
condoms are condoms. I mean, it is what it is.
For all of your equipment needs, KrebsKubota.com is where to take care of those needs, whether it's around your residential property or commercial property, big or small equipment. Krebs Kubota will help you out because they're an elite Kubota dealer that has 3 great locations in Murfreesboro, Columbia, and in Franklin. They also have the best equipment and the best warranties because of being an elite Kubota dealer. So check them out online this spring and this summer at KrebsKubota.com.
A to Z Sports, we are powered by BetMGM. Download the BetMGM app today. Get in on the action. Man, I woke up this morning a little bit tired because the damn LA Lakers, LeBron, you got to hit the top of the key 3 choke job. He had his opportunity. I'm not getting into the refs. That's not why they lost their game. The reason why they won the game was Jamal Murray going ham over Anthony Davis in the corner. So, look, I had some money on that. Jamal Murray needed 1 more assist to hit my parlay, but that's my problem, not yours. You can have other problems tonight because we got another NBA slate. I'll be a part of those problems or solutions, I like to say, with BetMGM. Download the BetMGM app. Use the bonus code ATOZ Sports.
All right, we need way more likes in the show. Way more likes in the show. So, all right, so there are a lot of debating back and forth between Zach and Sam about Alt or Nabers. I think the interesting part of this aspect is because a lot of times we're using examples that are made by Titans brass of the past. It's hard to judge what this new offense is going to be, what Brian Callahan is, what Bill Callahan is, and what Rand Carthon's evaluation processes are. Because, Zach, you brought up Dylan Radins. Nobody thought Dylan Radins was going to be a top 60 pick in the 2022 NFL draft or 21 NFL draft, but John Robinson made him one, right? It's a John Robinson problem there with that, where that was a reach considered a round. So
you don't know what they do later in the rounds, though. That's the point, is they could reach to draft a guy like that. And I don't want to do that.
So I think we have to look at, and it's hard because we're trying to use past draft history to justify this draft when we're trying to project this draft.
Welcome to the show. Right?
No, I'm look. And so I think what I'm looking at is that I have heard just about anybody who gets paid professionally to discuss the NFL draft throughout the last 4 months discuss how good this offensive line class is throughout the top first round into the second round. This was what Peter Schrager used on NFL Network earlier this draft season. Of these 12 names who could find themselves being drafted in the first round, that would be by far the most offensive lineman to ever be drafted in the first round in history by like 4 players. Not all are tackles. You got some centers and guards, interior linemen in here, some right tackles, some guys that could be a tackle in college that go to guard. But then this also doesn't include, Patrick Paul, one of Sam's favorite guys. It doesn't include Penei Sewell's cousin, Kingsley, out of BYU. So there's 14 offensive linemen that could be 38 picks, right? You're just trying to find out who's the tackle that could be there at 38. What is their floor, and what can Bill Callahan make their ceiling? And I think when you're looking at the offense, the wide receiver position, we heard Matt Miller say last week on Ramon, Kayla, and Will in the Zone that it's a lot of receivers at the top of the draft and then not a lot of receivers late in the draft. The Titans don't have a 3rd round pick. That's a gaping hole in this conversation too. And so if the Titans take Joe Alt at 7 and find themselves at 38 with a Ricky Pearsall, Troy Franklin, or a Ladd McConkey at 38, then you don't pick again until 106, right? Or maybe you go an edge rusher at 38. You don't pick a wide receiver until 106. Now you're flirting with Dez Fitzpatrick territory to continue our John Robinson examples from the past. And it's really hard
Austin,
to use.
we had a show about this. All that is telling you, and I'm not saying that they're saying this, but if actions speak louder than words, what that is telling you is that they're willing to risk the future of Treylon Burks and Kyle Phillips. Not saying that's right or wrong, but those two guys are on the roster. Treylon Burks is a first-round wide receiving pick. Good, bad, and different. That's what they're telling you. So if they tell you that that's how they feel, then they're willing to go to war with Treylon Burks and Kyle Phillips for at least 1 year in a situation where they have DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley. And if they told me that, I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that because they have a left tackle.
And ultimately, I do agree with that. And it's kind of an interesting line that I toe with this is, you know how I feel about the wide receivers in the second round, Austin. I'm not quite as in on them. There are some wide receivers in like the third round area that I think are super underrated. Like if the Titans could find a way to trade back from 38, get a day, they take Joe Alt at 7, they trade back from 38, get an extra day 2 pick and come away with Jalen McMillan. I'm doing backflips. I think he's the most underrated receiver in this class. I love him. Overall, I'm not as in on that second crop. And I think once you kind of pass this elite group right here, the need for a wide receiver goes down significantly. I'm not looking to get a receiver who can just get me 600 yards a year and fit into this offense and be a third guy, right? I don't need a wide receiver 3. As Zach said, right? You've got Treylon Burks, you got Kyle Phillips, you got Nick Westbrook-Akine. You can make do. My goal is to get a difference maker for the next 10 years and try and land that guy at 7. But if you're not going to do it then, I think the need for a wide receiver diminishes significantly the farther away from the first round you get.
All right. So for me to answer the question, because the YouTube poll that we put up there has a lot of votes over the last 46 minutes. It is 60% that if the Titans have both Alt and Nabers at 7, 60% Malik Nabers, 40% Joe Alt. Here is how I answer the question. I simply have these two players, and I'll add in Rome Odunze as the other receiver in this crop, and I rank them 1 through 3. And that is how I would pick them. And it's not because of the positional value or the needs and all the points that have been made. I think Malik Nabers is the best NFL player of the 3 of Nabers, Alt, and Odunze, and I have them ranked in that order. And so I simply have, if Nabers and Alt are there at 7, I take Malik Nabers. I think he is the best player of that crop. If Nabers is gone, which I think he's very likely to be gone, and at 6 of the Giants, then I would take Joe Alt over Rome Odunze. There's a chance that both could be gone. Let's say the Chargers can't trade back. They take Joe Alt at 5. Giants take Malik Nabers at 6. Now you're saying, do you take Rome Odunze at 7, or do you trade back to 11 with the Vikings who desperately want J.J. McCarthy? And that's where things get dicey and in the weeds, right? But I would also be okay with Rome Odunze right there at 7 too. And so, but that is how I peg these particular players in these situations. I just think Malik Nabers is different. And Zach, I know you can hate on Bruce Feldman's reputation all you want, but when he reports,
everybody should.
I don't know. I don't think Bruce Feldman has that bad of a reputation. Like, I don't know what you're holding on to.
You can die on that hill. We'll move on.
That's fine. I'm not trying to die on the hill. I'm just going to say, like, Bruce Feldman does valuable things. When he reports that coaches in the NFL love the ability for Malik Nabers to do it all, where Marvin Harrison Jr. can't run by you, but Nabers can. Nabers can break tackles. He's the combination. This was a quote from one NFL wide receiver coach in Feldman's article, that Malik Nabers is the combination of Tyreek Hill and Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk. And that's kind of a weird thing to think that could be available. It's a combination of those 3 guys, 3 of the top 7 receivers in the entire league. I'm in. And and this isn't the only time I've said I'm in on Malik Nabers. I just think he's the best player potentially available for the Titans if he's there.
So I want to say this. I don't hate Malik Nabers by any means. I've just stated my case that I prioritize different things than the two of you. I hope that the Titans prioritize things the way that I view them because I believe that's the way that they go. It's just an opinion, right?
Sure.
I think that they have to address my value of team need is greater than any player at this point in time because of my quarterback. That they have put their chips in. They've traded picks for. They tried to trade in the first round for Will Levis. They got him in the second. The value, and I know you're trying to help Will Levis, but the opportunity to protect Will Levis is greater to me because of Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins currently. And Roderick brought this up, and I'm glad that this was brought up. Burks and Phillips will then now have no excuses. Sketch. Pressure makes diamonds. I want pressure on Treylon Burks, and I want pressure on Kyle Phillips. That's the measure of a man. They already spent the draft picks on those guys. Let's see what they can do, and if they don't work out, you got more money and more picks down the road, but at least you can protect your quarterback. Here's the last thing that I'll say. That's what I think that they should do. They should draft Joe Alt if they have the opportunity to. I think Brian Callahan is a wide receiver guy. And I don't necessarily think that they will go Joe Alt. I think he's mesmerized by, and you can't hate on him for it. He's been surrounded by a number 1 overall pick, Joe Burrow, throwing to talented wide receivers. And the results we're in, that works, right? Super Bowl appearances, AFC championship games, right? Joe Burrow's not Will Levis. Brian Callahan may think that he can make him into it, but I want to protect my franchise, not just Will Levis. So that's why I pick, but my gut feeling, because I don't know, I'll have another opportunity to say this, I would pick Joe Alt. My gut feeling is this new offensive-minded, sexy, just throw the ball all over the field. I think that they're going to be infatuated with the wide receiver position more so than the left tackle. And so I would not be surprised if the team chose where you guys are going over where I am going. And I would think that would be the wrong move, but that's how I feel.
Well, I know that there was a philosophy that existed within the Cincinnati Bengals organization while Brian Callahan was the offensive coordinator there that said you only take 2 people in the top 10 of the draft, guys that score touchdowns or guys that sack the quarterback. Or obviously the quarterback. But, if you're supporting a quarterback, it's guys that sack the quarterback, guys that scored touchdowns. I think that might carry over as well, Zach. And so I would kind of agree with you. I do think the Titans would jump at the opportunity to take somebody like Malik Nabers. Going back to what Austin said, yeah, the reality of the situation is like the Titans are not going to be in a spot unless there is something unforeseen where they have this opportunity in front of them. I mean, it would take 4 quarterbacks to go in the top 6. It would take Marvin Harrison Jr. to go and for somebody to jump on Rome Odunze before either Joe Alt or Malik Nabers. We don't expect this to be the board when the Titans come up, but I do find this to be a productive discussion because as those picks start coming off the board, Zach's going to be sitting there being, don't say Joe Alt, Roger. Don't say Joe Alt. Don't do it. And I'm going to be sitting there going, please don't say Malik Nabers. Let him keep falling. Let him keep sliding. And, you got to know what to root for when you go into it. I'll cap it off by saying what I've been saying the whole time. The opportunity to go and get that star wide receiver, that guy that every other NFL fan base looks at and covets, that guy that everybody hopes will be available for you, that gets open for your quarterback to get the ball out quickly, that makes plays with the ball in his hands, that is young, that is explosive, that can be a hybrid of all of the guys that thrive in today's league. You're not in that spot very often. I think this is a perfect kind of like, what am I? like a perfect harmony and like a combination of all these different things where you've got 4 quarterbacks at the top of the draft with quarterback needy teams and an elite wide receiver class. And the Titans were just bad enough to get in a spot where they're not 8th, they're not 9th. They're not one of those teams that's like, man, I would love one of those wide receivers, but can't have them. Take Malik Nabers. Let Brian Callahan, your offensive-minded head coach, scheme up protection. Let Bill Callahan identify offensive line talent in rounds 2 and 4. Take Malik Nabers and get the guy that's going to change your offense.
All right. So I did put up a poll because somebody asked who won today's debate. So it's on YouTube right there between Zach and Sam.
Oh boy.
So we'll see how that goes. I'm not gonna decide. I'll let the YouTube.
I'll say this before I don't know the results. I think people are, and I'll put myself stubborn, selfish, and egotistical. And I think that Nabers won the first poll, so I think that Nabers is going to win the second poll.
I do have an advantage there. Yeah,
yeah. I think
if more people agree with my point coming in, then I'm gonna.
Zach had the hard task of arguing for a boring offensive lineman.
I'll do that every day of the week. If I believe in something, you're gonna have to kill me.
Yeah, for sure. We do have a lot of super chats to get to, so we'll do that here in a second. But first, shout out to Wilson County Hyundai. Make them a part of your new car buying process. Go see him in Lebanon and say hey to Payne Bone while you're there. He'll help you save some money and find that right ride for you and your family, whatever that situation is with your new car. Check them out online or in Lebanon, online at wilsoncountyhyundai.com. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into some super chats here to wrap up the show. We'll skip on throwing shade because it's almost 9:30 and I've got a handful of super chats to get to. King VC says, lock in like the show. We're doing pretty good. Facebook is almost to 130. YouTube is really climbing up there as well of likes on the show to 154. So King VC wants to get it 215 per platform. So if you haven't liked the show yet, please do that for us. Super chat to come in here. Kane says, you get the wide receiver. If the O-line coach is as good as you claimed, let him prove it and draft a tackle later. You can get alt production from another tackle, but you can get another player like Nabers.
All right, let me say it. I started this comment. James Hughes gets the love of the show, of this tri-stream show on draft week. It goes to James Hughes because he went Cam Newton of, but we have Bill Callahan. Daddy Bill is going to save every single thing that you could ever think of and help your wildest dreams. I knew it was going to happen at some point in the show. This guy is a matchmaker, a Miss Cleo. He can do it all. He can't win a Super Bowl in 2002 because if you didn't know that, Sam, he did lose that Super Bowl at Qualcomm Stadium in San Diego to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know if you knew that.
What were the jerseys? What was the jersey combination that game, Zach?
Red over pewter, white over silver.
There you go. Yeah. All right. So we know, hey, look, but hey, the Titans have flaunted Bill Callahan's ability to break down offensive line play. Even Joe Alt had a quote to our guy Tron Davenport, who's been watching the show this morning.
Yeah. Last thing, what about that? What about pairing Daddy Bill with the best tackle in the draft?
It's attractive.
It's a super couple.
Sure.
It is a super couple. I don't know how bigger you get than that. I don't know, what's the most famous couple? That's Justin Bieber and Haley Bieber. That's probably the most popular couple in America. Beyonce and Jay-Z.
Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce.
Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. Well, look, they're not married. They gotta land the plane.
I was going to say Brad and Angelina, but
right? I was going to come up with some of those too, but then I was like, well, divorce. MJ,
you can't use like Will Smith and Jada anymore because there's that, like that.
You sure as hell.
I mean, that used to be the thing. Is like, man, that Jada and Will love was the J. Cole lyric, and then it's not great anymore. That didn't age well.
That was like Craig Aukerman and whoever the hell was blocking on the end of the line versus the Colts on special teams.
Josh Wiley. All right, more super chats. Brandon comes in and says, regardless of Alt or Nabers at 7, I think 38 should be a tackle. It's going to be the best player available at 38, which is why I lean Nabers at 7. So I think good comment, and I think Brandon's got a point. I'd said this last week. I do think a combo of tackle and wide receiver should be what they do at 7 and 38 if they don't add a third-round pick somehow. but I would also not, like dismiss double tackles at the first and second round.
Double tackles, that would feel good.
Well, especially because there's a lot of those guys in that round 2 range, right around 38, that are like very talented right tackles, and their value's been kind of like knocked down a little bit because they're right tackles. And so, yeah, you could come away with like 2 starters on the offensive
You
line.
hedge your bet because you have NPF, 3rd round pick, 2nd round pick, 1st round pick, 1st round pick, free agent, right? Like, and free agent. So like that. Now, Will Levis, I feel good about. The amount that they did during free agency at wide receiver with Calvin Ridley really influences my opinion. And that's why tackle, that's double the protection. That's scrapping up twice. That's good.
All right. Darren's got back-to-back super chats. Generally agree with Sam's drafting philosophy here, but being so traumatized from unwatchable football. The last 2 years, his gut is picking the best left tackle, and then continues to add Trent Williams, Lane Johnson, Larry Tunsil, Penei Sewell. Need one of these type of guys. And I think, that would be ideal. Trent Williams has been doing it for 35 years in the NFL. Lane Johnson has been phenomenal. I heard Joe Alt in an interview talking about Lane Johnson and how he's watched a lot of Lane Johnson tape, but it's hard to watch a guy that athletically gifted and compare yourself to him because Lane Johnson's also a freak, as is Larry Tunsil, as is Penei Sewell. So I think quality comments there from Darren on the topic. Got Andre's super chat coming in. If the gap between Alt and the second round tackles was as large as the one between Nabers, Adunze, and the second round wide receivers, then I'd agree with Zach. But Alt isn't miles ahead of the second round tackles. And I think this is why this draft, to go along with this Titans free agency and this new coaching staff, has made this offseason so damn fun and interesting, because we don't know what the right answer is, because we don't have anything to base it off of other than what the Bengals have done for the last 5 years. And they have an outlier in Joe freaking Burrow to start with. And we don't think Will Levis is that. And it wouldn't be fair to Will Levis to say that he is that. But that's why this is so interesting.
I did Go ahead. I was going to say, I had a chuckle yesterday because on yesterday's show, Austin and I wanted to bring you in, Sam, to see if you thought this. Do you think that J.C. Latham will be drafted in the top 10?
No.
Do you think that there's any chance that he gets drafted in the top 10?
Yes. I think there's a chance. I don't necessarily foresee it because I think he's a right tackle and most teams are going to be looking at a left tackle. But I mean, I saw my guy Tehran in the chat earlier said that there are teams that have J.C. Latham as the offensive tackle 1. And
well, this is 2. I laughed yesterday because I went down and I follow Chris Sims, who this is a wild mock draft. I don't agree with
I looked at it and it made me angry. I logged offline.
I don't know if I'm
There you go.
7. J.C. Latham. I was like, oh God. But Alt goes at 5 to the Chargers,
and
right?
Nabers is off the board there as well. And that would just have to be a level of conviction from the Titans front office. And that's obviously it's the unsaid of every draft is like what their board looks like, because everybody would say, why would you do that? With JJ McCarthy still there, you could trade down and go get Talise Fuaga or go get Troy Fautana, go get a different offensive lineman in the mid-teens, right? But if the Titans have J.C. Latham in their board as like that one of those top guys, then maybe he at 7, they love that pick, right?
I think like what we don't know about Chris Sims' mock draft is he didn't have JJ McCarthy getting traded up at 5. Maybe he did a no trade mock. And he just thinks that the Titans and
no. JJ McCarthy goes 3 in his.
Okay.
It was like Drake May.
May falls, right?
Which I've seen some of that speculation, but you never know.
There may be a quarterback that falls, and in this situation, because I looked at it, you have Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and JJ McCarthy going 1, 2, 3. So Drake May has fallen. So the next 3: Marvin Harrison Jr., Joe Alt, and Malik Nabers. We all agree with that's. At least I do, the order that it should be, right?
Yeah.
All Nabers. So now you're sitting there, and in this situation, I don't draft J.C. Latham. I do everything in my power to trade away that pick for Drake May to somebody and move down and get more picks.
Yeah.
Because
Sure.
the two guys that this entire show is about is Joe Alt and Malik Nabers. You're not going to have an opportunity to draft either of them. So go get more picks and create the value that we've discussed at the positions of need.
Yeah, like Hello Lady says, last week Sam did this where he traded back to 14, got a 45th overall pick, took Latham at 14.
Right? I liked this because I favorited this comment because I wanted to throw shade at Hello Ladies because this upset me. And Zach, I'm sure you're not aware of this because you haven't been on these shows, but Austin and I probably spent 30 minutes of a show. I had a mock draft on A to Z Sports where I traded down to 14 and 45. I took JC Latham with the 14th overall pick in the draft. And then I added a defensive lineman and another offensive lineman in round 2, came away with 2 tackles and a defensive lineman. I felt very good about it. Some of the chat didn't. And people like Hello Ladies are not able to get over the fact that a mock draft is not what I want to happen. It's a projection of what I think could happen in a given scenario. And we tried to explain this for like half an hour. And now he's sitting there because I'm arguing for Malik Nabers, seen by LOL. Sam was just saying we need to trade back for an offensive lineman. I don't know how many times I can say it. I do not want the Titans to do that trade and not draft Malik Nabers. But if Malik Nabers and Joe Alt are off the board, I think a trade down is somewhat likely in that spot. And so that is what I'm trying to like. My mock drafts are not Sam's dream list of players that the Titans. Here's my draft brushes.
The show represents
you have your wish list
scenario,
which is that. Yes, your wish list on A2Zsports.com that you wrote yesterday is what you're dreaming for.
How many times do we have to explain what a mock draft is before we?
I mean, let's be honest. I think you can guarantee. Like you get 7. The hard part about pre-draft talk, and this is why you kind of get like cabin fever at the end, or just like get it here. We need to know. I think the guarantee that you can say Caleb Williams is going to be drafted before the Titans. Jaden Daniels is going to be drafted before the Titans. Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be drafted before the Titans. I think those 3 you can guarantee to say. Mm-hmm. I think Malik Nabers and or Joe Alt will be drafted before the Titans.
One of the two.
One of the two. I'm not going to say both, but I think we're talking about guarantees. So there's 4. The unique part about this draft is quarterback needy teams, but the Patriots are acting like they don't need one, which is kind of upsetting. It's just like, you're an idiot. Stop. I think that 5th one is the quarterback. Either Drake May or JJ McCarthy will be drafted above the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah.
I think you could guarantee 5. Right? So you have this singular pick before you draft. This is the wild card. What is this going to be? That's the hardest part about this scenario. I think the likeliness of the Tennessee Titans being able to have the pick of the litter between Malik Nabers and Joe Alt is very unlikely. I love this show. I hope that it works out. It doesn't, based on logic, what we just talked about, there's one wild card and your teams have already picked their players, right? Mm-hmm. Where the Titans are drafting is the most impactful thing about this whole discussion. And that's 7, which is not great. It's not bad, but it's not great because you don't have the power. The power is above you at the 5 and then the wild card, which is Chargers, honestly. The Chargers and Giants, right? Those are the 2 wild cards.
Well, here's what I was going to say is it goes full circle. Week 18, Jags at Titans. The Titans win that game and pick 7th instead of 6th. That's your difference.
And now if they pick 6, you're getting Joe Alt or Malik Nabers based on the exercise that we just went through.
Yep. Guaranteed. One of them. So
got to hope somebody gets quarterback desperate and moves up farther than they need to. But quick little note on that, by the way, because I did bring this up as well, is like the problem with wanting that team to trade up to 6 or trade up to 5 or whatever it is to go get that other quarterback. There's not a ton of quarterback needy teams behind the Titans. Like Atlanta is not going to go get one. The Bears are already going to have one at 1st overall. I think the Jets are at 10. They're good with Aaron Rodgers. So, like, if you're one of those teams like the Vikings or the Broncos or whatever, trading up to go and get one of these quarterbacks,
11,
Raiders,
12, 13.
Yeah. Like, how do you feel the need to go all the way up to 6 and jump a bunch of teams that probably aren't going to take a quarterback? I don't know. Like, that would surprise me if somebody was like, we need to go from 11 to 6 or 11 to 5 to go and get a quarterback.
Who's the quarterback?
Sure, right. I mean, that is the variable, right? Is it JJ McCarthy or Drake May?
If it's Drake May, I agree with you. I think Drake May's stock is falling just based on like what has been said.
Yeah.
We don't know. If it's JJ McCarthy, I think he's more coveted. So now, and who knows, but look, all we know is what Adam Schefter, I mean, those guys on the inside, they have agents. I mean, we know what's going on, but that I think is your scenario. If Drake May falls, the Titans are probably not going to be able to trade back.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, you got to hope somebody comes and gets that 4th quarterback, because then that opens up one of these 2 guys we just talked about.
Chris Sims' scenario is the worst case scenario, in my opinion, for the Titans.
Agreed. Said it last week. It's the second offensive lineman at 7. That's the worst case scenario.
And because nobody's going to trade up, because nobody likes Drake May, because he looks like Mitchell Trubisky.
Yeah, and he's Sam Howell, right?
It's a great point. Great point.
He's all 3 of them.
Yes. All right.
Hey, Mitch is still a guy. Mitch is still a guy.
Okay, Bears fan. Andre says his only concern for Nabers is diva potential, whereas Rome seems to have that D-Hop Fitzgerald type mentality. That's where I would take Rome over Alt too.
Give me the diva. I don't care. Give me the diva. Divas are good at football usually. So
yeah,
I'll take it.
in order to be a diva, you have to be good. You don't see divas who are bad because they don't last very long. And then King VC Super Chat says, I'd like to advocate for more 3-person shows. Well, because it's 9:40 a.m. Central Time and we've been doing this for an hour and 26 minutes.
This is why we don't.
This is exactly why we don't. So I would also like to advocate for more likes on the show. So that's where I would say King VC. I will advocate for that. I think you guys are doing a great job in the chat of liking the show. We got 139 on Facebook, approaching 200 on YouTube. King VC wants us to get 215 per platform all week. I think we can do that. Did it yesterday. So any parting thoughts as the Michael Wilbon used to ask Tony Kornheiser back in the day? Parting thoughts, Zach or Sam?
I wish I had a Post-it note on me. I'm going to do my Malik Nabers no matter what Post-it and stick it on my computer every time.
That didn't work out for Austin last year, so you probably want to avoid that.
Maybe I'll do the Austin Jinx then. I'll say not Malik Nabers no matter what, and then he'll end up on the Titans.
It did work out for me because it was awesome content. That's what it was all about. All right, guys, that's it for us. Tomorrow, Sam and I will be back on here, and we'll recap what happens later today. This afternoon, the Titans have a pre-draft press conference. Sam will be there at St. Thomas Sports Park, so we'll see what Rand Carthon and others have to say about it. But make sure you hit that like button on your way out, trying to get to King VC's goal. Also, Buck Rising live tonight, A to Z Sports Primetime, with a new start time of 7 p.m. Central, so be locked into that on these same channels, and we'll catch you guys later on. Appreciate it as always.
Adios.